Welcome to Pavinars, webinars for the pavement community. My name is Andrew Bram, and today we'll talk about performing a literature review, and I'm very excited because this is the 2025 update. The original Performing a Literature Review Pavinar was posted on June 20th, 2021. It had over 1,000 views, so thank you very much for watching. And I also received some good, strong feedback from the community, so I believe an update is warranted. So let's get started on the 2025 Performing a Literature Review. I think it's very important to have a good literature review because it shows readers that you have first done your homework. This means that you have an overall knowledge of the brief history of the problem, and this mainly includes the seminal works over the decades, the anchors that have really moved our knowledge forward in the topic area. It shows that you know what others have done, both inside and outside of pavements, and almost most importantly, it shows what holes in the body of knowledge you are filling. So there's some sort of knowledge out there, and through research we identify new areas that have not been explored, and those are the holes in the body of knowledge. It also ensures that you provide understanding of both the complexities and the subtleties of the subject. I have found that the more I learn, the less I know about any given topic, and literature reviews are the first step in that journey. And really, at the end of the day, especially if you're a doctoral student, at the end of your PhD, you should be teaching your advisor about your subject, about the nuances of your subject, about those details that you start to understand after reading paper after paper. So it's a long road, but it's a very fruitful and a very productive road. Now, outside of the technical content, another reason I think that literature reviews are very important is it allows you to see how others write. Writing is not easy, and I cannot imagine writing in a non-native language, and I know many of you write in English, and English is not your native language, and I cannot imagine having to do that. That must be very difficult. But even myself as a native English speaker, sometimes when I read articles, I find myself really enjoying it. I think, wow, this is a really nicely written paper. I really understand it. Well, you can take how they structure their content. So how are paragraphs broken down? How are the sections broken down? What sort of flows and transitions do they have? How do they use tables and graphs? So while reading very good papers, you can also get ideas on how to become a better writer. So that's completely outside of your technical expertise, but it's just another benefit of reading other articles. And really, at the end of the day, a good literature review sets the foundation of your work. It allows you to have a strong foundation, so when you're up in front of your committee, when you're up in front of an audience, you can talk about what has been done and talk about why what you are doing is important. So there are loads of pavement journals out there. This first set is all of the journals in specific types of materials. For example, we got a couple concrete journals, the Concrete Institute of Materials Journal, ACI, American Concrete Institute, AAPT, the Association of Asphalt Paving Technologists, then Cement and Concrete Research, and Cement and Concrete Composites. And I'm sure there are others out there, but these are the big ones. We also have two very good pavement-specific journals. I would consider these probably the two highest quality journals in the world of pavements, the International Journal of Pavement Engineering, or IJPE, and Road Materials and Pavement Design, or RMPD. Two very, very good pavement journals. Then we have various journals that have topics on many things, but a lot of very good pavement work. And that there are three from the American Society of Civil Engineering, the Journal of Materials and Civil Engineering, the Journal of Testing and Evaluation, and the Journal of Transportation Engineering Part B Pavements. So three very nice journals from ASCE. There's also Construction and Building Materials, Materials and Structures, and then Transportation Research Record, or TRR. And this is by no means the complete list of pavement journals you should be looking at, but if you start reading these, you will certainly be on the right track of getting knowledge about your subject area. I also want to point out a resource provided by our friends at APSE, the Academy of Pavement Science and Engineering. And this is a database of what they call critical readings for pavement engineering. So if you go onto their website, if you just search APSE, Academy of Pavement Science and Engineering, you can easily find their website. And through a few clicks, you can find a database of critical readings for pavement engineering. So this is readings that the community feels are important in various subject areas. Now, there are two types of literature reviews. First is in the field of pavements. Obviously, you can start through those journals that were listed on the previous slide. Also, take a look at national level reports. Here in the United States, we have the National Cooperative Highway Research Program, or NCHRP. NCHRP reports are those seminal reports I was talking about. These are really anchors in time. NCHRP is funded by states. States come together and determine what topics need to be looked at, so these projects are important to a wide cross-section of states, and the research teams that do them are extremely high quality, and they do a very nice job of taking a look at what is the status quo, what are we looking at, and what are our preliminary answers. So really, NCHRP reports are always an excellent, excellent place to start. There are also many states here in the United States that have absolutely excellent online archives of their reports. And the two that I think are the best are Texas and Minnesota. Texas, TTI, TxDOT, they have done a phenomenal job of archiving all of their reports. And I go back to their reports on a regular basis. And our friends up in Minnesota, MnDOT, they also have very, very nice reports. Then kind of outside of state reports, but for example, NCAT at Auburn, the National Center for Asphalt Technology, they also have a very nice repository of reports. So lots of good reports available out there. A specific search engine for transportation is TRID, the Transportation Research International Documentation. If you just Google TRID, TRID Transportation, it should be the first one or two that pops up. And you can use that. It's a search engine especially for transportation related themes. And then our friends over in Europe, RILEM, they also have some phenomenal resources on their website. And they have a very nice long title there. The International Union of Laboratories and Experts in Construction Materials, Systems, and Structures, aka RILEM. Now, especially for dissertations, it's important to go outside of pavements. And that's because usually in dissertations, we're starting to look at topics that maybe are not very well understood in pavements. And a lot of our best ideas come from outside of pavements. So, for example, if you're dealing with cracking, you should be reading fracture articles in metals and concrete and other composites. If you're dealing with semi-bound materials like cold central plant recycling, cold in place recycling, or full depth reclamation, we should be looking at soils. And I know soils is kind of within pavements, that's kind of a gray area. But the point is that there's a lot of good information outside of pavements in a lot of our subject areas. So definitely use textbooks, because usually if you're outside of pavements, you're not as familiar with those subjects as you are within civil engineering. So use their textbooks, use fracture mechanics textbooks, use steel textbooks in order to get keywords and general concepts that could really help you launch searches in their journals. Engineering Village is a great search engine for technical articles. It's all of engineering, and it's more on the science side of things. So Engineering Village and TRID are two great search engines outside of the Googles of the world. And once you've kind of started poking around with these, you should be able to start finding typical journals in other fields, and then you can start searching those journals through their websites, through their references, and those type of resources. Now, really, when you're starting to try and dig into your area, the first 5 to 7 articles are the hardest because it is overwhelming. There is literally an infinite amount of resources out there, And it's difficult, and I understand that. But once you kind of get going, once you start getting in a groove, it does become easier. Now, I encourage you, if you find about 5 papers or reports, to start creating your citations. Now, I'm old school. I just do authors, title, journal, volume number, and date, and page numbers. I don't really subscribe to formatting references. I know that you have to do that when you submit journals, but whenever I end up submitting a journal, I just do it for that one journal and move on. However, if I was just starting out, I would probably use some sort of reference tool. Here are 5 of them: Mendeley, EndNote, Zotero, Dossier, Citavi. Anyway, there's a whole bunch of them out there. I got these 5 from simply Googling what are the best reference tools available, and these were the first 5 that were listed, and I recognize 3 of them. The first 3, I do not recognize the next 2, but I'm sure there's others out there. I'm not trying to sell anything, but if you are going to start creating a reference database, these type of tools are very, very powerful and can be very helpful. So that's something to consider. Also, as you're reading these first papers, I really encourage you to dig deep into them. And first off, I do encourage you to take a look at another Pavinar I wrote, the Reading a Journal article, because I think for these first ones, you really should read the full article and take notes as you're reading. And as you're reading, write down everything you think is interesting. This is general concepts, new and specific terms, and salient findings, because this will start establishing the framework of what is important to think about when looking at literature and when carrying out your research. And you also want to browse references and think about which authors keep reappearing and which journals are referenced that you haven't searched. So utilize those tools in order to keep moving forward. Now, after you read these first 5 to 7, 5, 7, 10, whatever it is, your notes will become shorter because you're going to feel more comfortable with the subject. You're going to have fewer new and specific terms. The general concepts will become familiar, and really you'll just start to be able to focus on salient findings, and then you can kind of pivot to a different style of reading journal articles. Because after you read your first 5, you're just going to be doing the same thing over and over again. Because you really need a minimum of 5 to 10 articles on the foundation of the topic. These are those salient articles I've been talking about. And these will show that you're familiar with the history of your topic. These are the articles that everyone has read, everyone knows about, and they really have dictated how we have moved forward as a community. So you'll be able to reference the key articles that everyone else references, and you want a minimum of 5 to 10 of the most recent articles. And this will show that you're up to speed with the latest and greatest. And these will be the ones that everyone has not read because they're relatively new. And you want to target 10 to 20 articles at the beginning to justify your research. So this is kind of the minimum in order to launch your research topic or to make any specific decisions in your research. And please, I encourage you to go for quality and not quantity. I cannot tell you how many papers or theses or dissertations I've read where there's just pages and pages and pages of literature review, and that makes for very difficult reading. Now, also after reading these 10 to 20, I have another Pavinar. It's how to read a journal article, and I would recommend that you watch that Pavinar because I actually recommend a completely different approach from what I've said here. In fact, I encourage people not to read journal articles like a novel. Read the abstract, read the conclusion, and then look at pictures. Because once you've understood the main tools, you can then use journal articles just to mine very certain information that is targeted to your research. Now, as I kind of started talking about before, please do not just have a laundry list of papers. Do not have paragraph after paragraph saying, this article did this and found this. This article did this and found this, and so on and so forth. This is very difficult to read, and it's extremely low impact on justifying your work. You should use the literature review to bolster your decisions, to justify your choices and your discussion based on other people's findings, and to demonstrate the needs of your research. You need to think about how your work is either similar or different than previous research. Does it confirm previous research? Does it create new research areas? Is the concepts that have been talked about further justified? These are the questions that you need to be answering, and these are the things that you need to be proving through your work. Now, these are just some of my very high-level ideas on your literature review, but really there is no one right way to perform and to report on a literature review. And when I decided to redo this Pavinar, I reached out to my colleagues and I asked them, hey, you or your students have looked at this. What do you think? Because every advisor does things slightly different. Every advisor has a lot of great things that I probably don't do. And so I wanted to know what are some good things that are out there. So the biggest change in my mind, so some of my musings here at the University of Arkansas, is I think literature reviews should frame your paper. And I think they should frame your paper in two ways. In the background section, you should start big and narrow down. And I have a Pavinar on that. Big surprise, huh? I've thought a lot about this. But writing a background section. These are the seminal reports. You should stick to national level reports in your background section and established research groups. So this is really the things that people agree on. Now, your work may find something that contradicts something in here, and that's completely fine, but you need to show that you understand what does the pavement community think is important and what has driven our thinking over the years. And this will be national level reports and the established research groups. Those are the Illinois, the Texas A&Ms, the NCATs, the University of Nevada Renos, the New Hampshires, the big groups that really have driven thinking over the years. And back in the day, the Berkeleys with Carl Monosmith. Then for the results and discussion session, this is where you use literature review to ask the questions. Do your results support previous research? Do your results find something different? Use literature to justify your discussions and conclusions. I'm not going to talk too much about this, but one thing I can't stand is when I'm reading a journal article and all it's doing is saying, hey, look at this data. These numbers are bigger than those. These numbers are smaller than that. Therefore, this is better than that, or something along those lines. It's like I can look at a graph and see a trend. I want to know what you think about that data and use literature to try and better understand what you think about that data. Justify your discussion and justify your conclusions. And this is a very, very hard thing to do in data analysis. And again, that's a whole nother topic. I should make a Pavinar about that. But the point is here is we should use literature to justify your discussions and conclusions and have any sort of additional levels of insights possible within your paper. So this is kind of my thoughts after writing the previous Pavinar on literature reviews. And then my friend and colleague, Dr. Shane Underwood, he uses literature reviews in his group to track themes. So he encourages his students to prepare a topic outline. So what topic are they looking at? Make an outline to develop a general idea and then track papers around that general idea. And what this does is it allows you to understand what sort of themes are out there on papers. And this could be anything from cracking to warm mix to rutting to crack initiation to damage, all of these type of things. As you start going into very specific areas, these themes can become very specialized. And he recommends that after about 5 papers, you should create a table. And a column heading should be a thematic area, and then each row should be individual papers. And he says that really helps his group understand what sort of general concepts or themes are out there and what sort of papers are related to those themes and how do they fit together. And I think this kind of goes back to that APSI resource I talked about. They have 5 or 6 themes, and under each of those themes, they have the papers that they think are important. And Dr. Underwood and his group at NC State use this in their own internal work as well. And in the end, he says this helps track what they think is out there versus what is actually out there. And this is kind of an interesting comment. I've spent a lot of time with him. He's a good friend. And I can see him saying, yes, there are a lot of good journal articles about there, but we need to constantly be asking the question, how can we fully understand what they're saying, and may we actually be misrepresenting some of what they're saying? So there's a whole bunch of topics you can go down. Now, my good friends and colleagues, Dr. Amy Epps Martin at Texas A&M and Dr. Rajiv Malik at UTEP, they reached out to me and said, well, what about AI? How do we use AI? And I'm kind of old and crunchy, and so I'm not too sure about AI. And actually, ironically, if you look at my AI webinar, Artificial Intelligence in Academia, I misspelled intelligence in the title. I don't know if anyone noticed that. And that's kind of ironic because the AI that I say in that Pavinar spell check failed me. So we're talking about depending on AI, and I can't even depend on spell check to help me with intelligence. Now, granted, I should be able to spell, I should be able to review what I create, but I didn't, and my AI failed me, my spell check failed me. That's a side note. But if you do look at that artificial intelligence in academia, when we think about artificial intelligence and literature reviews, what I found out when I looked through literature is that AI helps you develop general ideas, it helps you track papers around general ideas, and it helps build topical themes. These are things that people out there believe that AI can help us with literature review. It can also help us identify gaps in the literature review. It can help us do a semantic analysis on the literature review. It can help us develop summary tables. And I didn't mention this before, but I think a sign of a strong literature review are summary tables. That is because if people are reading through, especially like a dissertation literature review or something, those can be 30, 40 pages long plus. Summary tables are very helpful. At the end of each section, have a summary table. And that's because if someone is looking at that dissertation literature review, chances are they do not want to read 50 pages of a literature review. They may have 1, 2, or 3 very specific things they're looking for. They can just jump from summary table to summary table, and if something catches their eye, then they can go back into the literature review itself and read more. So AI can help with summary tables. I've never done it. Maybe some of you youngins are a little more ambitious and you've done it, but it can help with summary tables. It can help with comparative analysis, and it can improve the clarity of content. However, AI does not draft new text. You cannot depend on AI 100% to write for you. You can use it as a tool, but you will need to go back and rewrite it in your style. It also will not review literature. It will not do what I actually think is the most important part of a literature review, which is understanding a topic. AI will not do that. AI will take all the literature and put it together for you like you have understood a topic, but it is up to you then to review the technical content and then to understand it. And this is actually what I am most nervous about, is we have these wonderful tools out there, but these tools will fail us. And it happened to me. I misspelled intelligence on the title slide of a Pavinar, and I actually think that's like the picture that advertises the Pavinar. My tool failed me. I failed because of my tool. It's one thing to misspell one word. People will look at it and shake it off, but I know people who will judge based on misspellings. It means I'm not attentive to detail. I did not take the time and the care to fully review my PowerPoint slide deck before I gave that presentation. Literature reviews are the next step, though, in impact. That was one presentation. Literature reviews, especially for your thesis or your dissertation, this is the foundation of who you are and your work. And AI does not review that literature for you. So I think you get the point. Remember, research develops new content. AI only uses existing information. So thank you, Dr. Epps-Martin and Dr. Malik, for saying the importance of talking about this during literature reviews. So in summary, literature reviews, you want to show your readers that you are competent in previous work. This includes both seminal research and current research. Please do not just simply provide a laundry list of papers. Literature reviews should help bolster your discussion. Literature reviews can help track themes. AI is a tool. I think tools should be used, but please be cautious when using tools. At the end of the day, it is your literature review, and you do need to understand all of the ins and outs of it. I encourage you to go for quality, not quantity. I would rather read a 20-page high-quality literature review than a 50-page laundry list. And finally, it does get easier as you read more. I distinctly remember reviewing and reading my first journal articles, and it is difficult. They are not written like anything else. But please trust me, it does get easier as you read more. Read 5 to 7, it'll get a little easier. Read 10 to 20, it'll get even easier. As you move on, it'll become second nature. So thank you very much for joining me. I hope you have an absolutely wonderful day.